Honestly, Black Lives Matter more than hashtags. What's up, y'all, and welcome to Durag Thoughts, where we talk about topics that challenge perspectives and others that give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And today, I want you to take a second. I want you to picture this scenario. So imagine this scene. You've worked all day long. You're adulting. It's been a long, hard day of work. And you commute home, you kick off your shoes, you're ready to relax. You go into your kitchen and you start cooking up dinner. You start cooking up dinner, and as dinner is on, you start scrolling Netflix. You grab your dinner, you sit down, and you try to figure out what show you're gonna watch that night, what show you're gonna catch up on, what is the thing that you're gonna do with the rest of your night. You've been chilling for a minute, it's been some time that's passed, you've caught up on some of your shows, you're enjoying just time to relax, and you decide to head back to your freezer and into your kitchen and go to your freezer and grab a bowl of ice cream. So you grab your favorite carton of ice cream out of the freezer, get the scooper out, fill that thing up with that hot running water so it gets that perfect scoop. Drop in 1, 2, 3, 4 scoops. You gotta go a little bit overboard. It's been a tough day. And so you head back to the couch, you continue watching whatever show you were watching on Netflix, chilling, eating that bowl of ice cream. And as you're enjoying this bowl of ice cream, just chilling out in your house, just one evening after work, you hear a loud noise at your door. And the next thing you know, before you really have a chance to react to it, all you hear is someone yelling you or yelling at you to show them your hands. You still haven't processed totally what's happening, but the next thing you know, you hear a couple loud bangs. And all of a sudden your vision starts to blur and shift, and the room starts to spin around as you find yourself falling into the floor. That, in essence, is the story of Botham Shem Jean, a 26-year-old black man, at the time he was 26, who was killed by a police officer in the Dallas area named Amber Guyger. And she thought that his apartment that she walked in on was hers, and that he was intruding upon her home, and she entered his home and shot him dead. She was convicted of murder at the beginning of October and was sentenced to just 10 years in prison for murdering him, much of which I don't really believe that she's gonna serve, and most people don't believe she's gonna serve the full 10 years. There are a lot of issues with this case in particular that bother me. First off, her 911 call, if you listen to it, I've listened to the entire thing, her first true reaction to the reality that she shot Botham, at least on the 911 call, was that she was going to lose her job. I know self-preservation is a human instinct, but you just shot an innocent man, and your job is to protect and serve Americans. And in this situation, your job is your highest priority of what to think about. My second issue is that Dallas PD brought into the conversation early on in what we saw in the news that a small amount of marijuana was found in Botham Jean's apartment. And this is a big issue because this is a consistent narrative that you will see in the media historically, and how black people are treated in the midst of any sort of situation like this. There is an instant work to dehumanize and rationalize, dehumanize the person of color, the black person, often a black male who was killed unjustly unarmed by making them seem like a criminal. Marijuana had no play in this whole situation, so there was no reason for that to be brought into the midst of news narratives. So you'll see a dehumanization of Black people in order to rationalize a killing, to rationalize the possibility that this thing could even happen. You've seen that happen with Trayvon Martin. You've seen that happen in any sort of situation where you see, let's say even Oscar Grant, he was resisting arrest. I don't care what anyone says, resisting arrest is not a crime punishable by death, by the death penalty. And Trayvon Martin, we see in his case, you all of a sudden start seeing these images of him pop up where he's chilling in a webcam photo or something, throwing up middle fingers, or learning of the fact that he smoked weed. None of these things have any play in the actual story. But you see these sort of things take place time and time again in order to really brainwash the public in thinking that this murder was justified. The third issue that I want to bring up into the picture of all of this is if you look at some of the evidence that was shown regarding Amber's social media content and her text messages, there were situations where she claimed to be a racist in exchanges with people. Oh, they don't like Black people. Oh, I'm just like them. It's all good. Things like, oh, why are we working this Martin Luther King Jr. event? I've worked this for years now. When is it going to be over? Oh, when Martin Luther King dies. Oh, ha ha ha. Like just making jokes in light of big Black events. Straight outright, calling yourself racist type content, and then other just violent sort of things that showed the desire to take people out, kind of a focus, if you will, on violence in certain messages. And you can go research these things and look them up yourself. There's plenty of examples, and you can go and do that work yourselves. But what I want to focus in on is that if you think that unchecked racism harms no one, look no further than this instance. Look no further than this case, because the reality is, if you don't check your racist tendencies, if you don't check your prejudice, if you don't check the racism that is within you, and this is really directed at white folks, if you don't check the racism that's in you, that stuff kills people. If you get yourself in a situation where there is a subconscious reaction to something that you have not checked, this could lead to the death of a Black person. In this situation, that's what happens. That's what happens in the midst of all this that has to do with this woman. This is what we talk about when we're talking about the history of policing in America. This is a lot of what we talk about when we talk about, I don't think that there are oftentimes cops who are walking out and says, I'm gonna kill a nigga today. That's what I'm finna do. But if you don't check your racist tendencies, this is the type of stuff that happens. This is the type of stuff that kills people, and it's unacceptable. Unchecked racism kills people, and negative social stereotypes kill people. They kill Black people. Let's make that very, very clear. Making stereotypes that have absolute no sense, negative stereotypes upon Black people, cause us to die, and it needs to end. And that's not to even mention the story that we're also seeing developing and has been developing over the last couple of weeks from Texas as well, with the murder of Atatiana Jefferson by a police officer. Her neighbor calls in I believe it was called a welfare call, basically to check and see if she was okay, because the door of her house was open, and that wasn't something that was usual. She's sitting in her house, picture this, playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew, living in this house to take care of her mom, I believe it was. And a police officer goes to the window. Within a 3-second span says, "Show me your hands," and sees her potentially with a gun in her hands. Obviously there's people, flashlights going around the house. No one has, like, there's police officers who kind of spread around this house and are flashlighting, trying to figure ish out. And in the midst of it, sees her and kills her dead right there. Kills her dead in front of her 8-year-old nephew. It's not right. It's not right. And when you have unchecked stereotypes, unchecked tendencies, unchecked racism, this is the type of stuff that happens. This is what happens when that stuff does not get checked. And it needs to end. There are implicit biases that are killing Black people. There are police's actions that are killing Black people. And in the reality of it all is I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of us becoming hashtags, and that being, I don't know, the only vindicating factor, that it brings awareness to this stuff is still happening, but this stuff should not be happening. It needs to end. I say that Black Lives Matter more than hashtags, not as a shot at the Black Lives Matter movement, because it is important and it is something that I support, something that I think has been extremely necessary in our culture. But I say that because Black lives should not have to be reduced to hashtags. They should not. And that's the essence of what Black Lives Matter is talking about. Black Lives Matter as a statement because Black lives have not mattered historically in America, that we deserve to matter in this country. We deserve to matter beyond being reduced to hashtags as we collectively, as Black people, scream for justice. Our lives should matter enough to give us equity and equality. They should matter enough for racism and all that its evils are to be recognized and dealt with. They should matter enough for us to have reparations. They should matter enough for us to have places in history textbooks that are edifying and deep dives and actually a true understanding of what we've gone through. They should matter enough for us to have an honest evaluation in this country and in this government in our realities of systemic oppression. Many will say that, well, more white people are killed by police every year than Black people. So what are you talking about? This doesn't even make sense. And so this is honestly a very annoying rebuttal to me. It's a very annoying concept, because think about it. 78% of America is white. 78% of this country is white people. So of course, more white folks are killed by police numerically than Black people are, because there are a hell of a lot more white people than there are Black people. But let's think about ratios, right? You got to think about ratios of the number of Black people in comparison to the number of white people. So per capita, by the ratio, Black people are about 2 times more likely to be killed by police than white people are. Gotta think about that. Some might say that Black people commit the majority of crimes, violent crimes in the US, and that's why we see more Black people being killed by police. And I say to you, think about it. Because if we think about what I just talked about a little bit earlier about the realities of systemic oppression, which America has chosen in a lot of ways not to deal with, and all the racist policies and the issues like stop and frisk in America, issues like arresting Black people in greater capacities or greater frequency than white people in cities like Chicago or Ferguson, for all these different things than you are arresting white people. Of course, the statistics are going to be skewed. How can you have an unjust system of oppression, and then try to cite statistics from that system knowing that the justice system is skewed and unjust, how are you going to cite statistics from that to say that black people are doing more wrong? It just doesn't make sense. There's a reality that has to be dealt with, that if policing is being done in an unjust way, in a disproportionate way, and the justice system is convicting black people in ways that it's not with white folks, of course it looks like white people are doing a lot less crime than black people. Let's go into one specific of this skewed justice. 1 ounce of crack and 18 ounces of cocaine have the exact same amount of jail time. Why? Crack and cocaine are the same thing. They're the same exact drug, except crack has been cooked down with baking soda and things to make it even easier movable. Crack is the drug of choice in poor communities. It's more affordable than cocaine. But cocaine is the drug of choice in rich communities, in very affluent communities. And so the fact that 1 ounce of crack cocaine is the full name of it, and 1 ounce of powder cocaine, or 18 ounces of powder cocaine, have the same exact sentence, it doesn't make any sense, except it does, because classism and racism and the war on drugs and all of these different variables in American history that people really want you to forget about are still at play. And they have to be wrestled with, and they have to be dealt with so that we can seek a fuller healing in this country. Or let's talk about this other skewed piece of American justice. So black youth are arrested 10 times more. They're 10 times more likely to be arrested than white youth for drug crimes, right? Black youth are 10 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes than white youth are. Yet, when we look at the statistics, the data on this, you can look at a study that was done by Duke, by their psychology department. If you go and actually dive into the data, white youth are actually twice as likely, basically twice as likely to be using drugs than black kids, and develop a drug abuse or addiction issue than black youth are. And yet we see a skewing, we see a large difference in the policing and arresting of these two groups. So you're telling me that most black kids are committing these crimes, and yet white kids are twice as likely to use these drugs. So what's really happening here? There's a lot of variables. You know, money talks, affluent nature definitely does help in the midst of this, but there's also societal perceptions. There's societal perceptions going on in the midst of this conversation, because if black kids and people of color are viewed as criminals and in the society, and while white people are viewed as equal citizens, as white people are viewed as full citizens rather, and we are not as people of color, therein lies the problem. Think, for instance, just the difference between the terminologies of the war on drugs and the opioid crisis. All of a sudden we have a crisis on our hands where we must help these people overcome these drug addictions. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but what I am saying is that on one hand you have this, while you have back in the day black folks dying and being policed heavily in the midst of the war on drugs, which has been admitted by presidents as an attack on black people and not legitimate at all. America has so much to deal with in the midst of this conversation. There is so much that America has to grapple with in order to establish equity and justice in this country: equity and equality and justice, all of those things together. Because America has created a space where Black folks are viewed as enemy combatants rather than full citizens. And it's a problem, and it's a problem that must be addressed. This means the media, this means churches, this means schools, this means all of these different places, the government, the justice system, all of these spaces have work to do. We're tired. We are tired, and we need justice. I know I'm tired. As a Black man speaking for myself, I'm tired, and we collectively as the Black community need justice. Black people are more than just hashtags. We are just as much image bearers of God as every other race of people in this country. We deserve better. We deserve life. We deserve full and abundant life. So that's it, y'all. That's the show. This is legitimately the end of the first season of Durag Thoughts, and it's fitting that it ends on a note that is as much sobering and real as the person that I am, the things that I stand for, and the things that I think we cannot afford to waste time in addressing and afford to not pay attention to. So that's it. We'll be back in a couple months with another edition of Durag Thoughts, addressing some different things. But for now, if you like this video, got anything from it, hit that like button, hit that notification bell situation so that you can stay up to date anytime I drop a new video, especially when the next season of Durag Thoughts comes out. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Comment, let me know what you think about this whole conversation and this topic. And I'll catch y'all on the flip. Be easy, y'all.